You ever have that favorite show, that one thing you just can't miss, and then one day, poof, it's just gone? Well, that's exactly what happened here. And what's wild is how the story of One Lost Podcast kicked off this incredible wave of innovation. It really tells us so much about where AI audio is headed. So it all kicks off with this post on Reddit. A user, Coffeeface, is basically putting out an SOS for their favorite podcast. And you can feel it in the post, right? They said they loved it dearly and even called their own post fairly desperate. This wasn't just some background noise for them. It was a part of their daily routine. All right, so what was this podcast that got people so worked up? It was called the Hacker News Recap, made by a company called Wondercraft. And the really cool thing about it, it was a totally automated experiment. Basically, a podcast created with zero human touch. Now, here's the genius of it. This wasn't your typical AI just reading headlines out loud. Oh no. It dove into the top 10 posts on Hacker News. And then, this is the killer feature, it analyzed the comment sections. It was figuring out the vibe, the arguments, the whole conversation happening around the news. That's a whole other level. And for everyone listening, this thing looked like the perfect marketing machine. I mean, it was completely hands-off, totally automated, and it just worked. So you can imagine the confusion when it suddenly went silent. The big question from the community was just why? Why shut down something that seems to run itself? Okay, so the official podcast is gone. But this is where the story gets really, really good. The community didn't just sit around and complain. Nope, they got to work. And check this out. Just a few days later, another Redditor, FathomX9, drops this comment. They didn't just find a replacement, they went ahead and recreated the entire thing by reverse engineering how the original worked. That's how much they missed it. And get this, it wasn't some epic month-long coding marathon. We're talking 3 to 4 hours of work. They basically just stitched together a couple of powerful APIs. OpenAI is for all the smart summarization, and then 11 Labs to get that super high-quality, realistic voice. And this whole thing brings up a really important question for anyone playing in this space. It's the classic trade-off, isn't it? Do you go for the cheaper option, something like OpenAI's standard text-to-speech, or do you shell out a bit more for that premium, almost indistinguishable from human quality you get with a service like 11 Labs? So let's talk numbers. To get that top-tier 11 Labs voice, the creator figured it would cost about $1 an episode. Now, $1 might not sound like a lot, but when you realize it's about 10 times more expensive than the standard option, well, for a personal passion project, that starts to add up really quick. So that's the DIY route. But let's be real. Most of us aren't going to spend an afternoon wrestling with APIs. So what about everyone else? Well, that's where things get really exciting with these new commercial platforms. You've got companies like Wondercraft, yep, the same one that made the original podcast, and others like JellyPod and CustomPod. What they're building is basically a recording studio in a browser tab. No code, no fuss. They're making this whole AI audio thing accessible to everybody. And the stuff you can do is just wild. You can drop in a link to an article and boom, you've got a script. You can create a whole dialogue with different AI speakers. And my favorite part, you can actually tell the AI to add ums and ahs, those little imperfections that, ironically, make it sound way more human. So it really boils down to two main roads you can take. You've got the DIY path, full control, total customizability, but you got to know how to code. Then you've got the platform approach, super fast, super easy, no technical skills needed, but you're probably paying a subscription. Two very different ways to get to the same goal. Okay, but how does this even work? How did we get from that classic, robotic, hello, world, to AI voices that can actually fool you? Well, the secret, it's not what you think. It has less to do with the audio itself and more to do with the script. There's this whole field of study called spontaneous text-to-speech, and the goal is pretty simple. Stop sounding like a perfect, boring robot. The aim is to capture all the weird, messy stuff of real human speech, the pauses, the filler words, the natural rhythm of how people actually talk. So what was the big aha moment in the research? It turns out the trick isn't just to make a better voice model. The real breakthrough was realizing you have to first write a more human script. You fix the text before you even think about generating the audio. And when we say make the script more human, what does that even mean? It means telling the large language model to be a little imperfect, to intentionally sprinkle in filler words like and you know, to repeat words sometimes, to use more casual grammar. All of that gets baked right into the text itself. And the research backs this up completely. This quote basically says it all. The script is just as important, if not more important, than the fancy audio model. If you want a great-sounding AI, you have to start with a great-sounding script. It's a text-first approach to quality. So, when you put all these pieces together, it brings us right back to where we started. It brings us to the ultimate dream that this whole story was pointing towards. Think about it. We started with a story of people trying to rebuild just one podcast they missed. But the tech that came out of that journey now makes it possible to create any podcast you can imagine, totally personalized to you. Just imagine your perfect personal morning briefing. It could kick off by summarizing the top posts from your favorite subreddits. Then it could read you a few articles from blogs you actually care about. It could even take all those email newsletters clogging up your inbox and turn them into one easy-to-listen-to audio digest, all in a single stream. And this isn't some far-off futuristic idea. The tools are literally here today. The platforms are live. So it really just leaves one question, and I'm asking you, what would be in your perfect personalized podcast feed? If you had an AI podcaster ready to create anything for you every morning, what would you have it say? It's kind of mind-blowing to think about, isn't it?